Hello, everybody. This is author Sam Baltrusis, and welcome to Haunted Hotels. Checking in this week with Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis is the one, the only Kayla Russell. Hey, how you doing?
Great, how are you?
So, Kayla is you're the housekeeping manager at the Farnsworth House Inn,
Yes, I am.
and you've done, of course, many other things as well. I'm sure at the house. So,
Absolutely.
So, Kayla, how did you get involved? And we were able to meet in person at the Farnsworth House in Gettysburg during the summer. But I was really impressed with what your sort of like backstory going into the house and what led you there in the first place.
Honestly, I started there about 17 years ago. I was moving to Pennsylvania from Annapolis, and I just thought it might be neat to work in one of the local bed and breakfasts. So I started out as a hostess in the house, and that is when I found out that the house was as haunted as it is. I did not know. I had no clue when I started there that it was as active as it actually is. Um, and I was somewhat of a skeptic, I will tell you, before I started, because I had no, I guess, I want to say, no experience with anything paranormal. So I had no idea. And when things started happening to me in the house, I realized there was something more to it than just people saying, there's a ghost. There really was. So I kind of started out as a hostess, and then the owner, Mr. Schultz, found out that I had a history degree and decided to have me do the house tours, and it was all history, no paranormal, which was fine because I really didn't know any of the paranormal stories that went along with the house at the time. And when I started doing the history tours, things started happening to me even more then. So it kind of led me to believe there was more to it, and I started doing all the other tours that the house had to offer. And it just kind of so happened that I worked as the marketing and promoting manager for a while. That job wasn't, it just wasn't for me. I like more hands on and really getting into stuff. So when my friend and manager of the ghost tours called me in March, talking about the housekeeping having issues, I said, well, I guess I could come out and help until you find someone else. That was in March, and I'm still there. So it's been fun. It's interesting working there. Very interesting.
So I love Gettysburg and I love the history with Gettysburg. I also love the Farnsworth House Inn as well. There's something about the energy when you walk in, you can feel it, and it's not a negative haunt,
Mhm.
it's a very positive haunt. But why, tell us like the whole backstory to the inn and sort of its place in history.
Basically, it was built. The original portion of the house was built in 1810, and then in 1833, the original owner John McFarland added on the brick structure of the house. It was there at the time of the Civil War, and up in the attic or the garret of the house were Confederate sharpshooters. So the side of the house that shows the attic window is riddled with over 100 bullet holes, and
Wow.
it's very it's breathtaking when you look at it because you just can't imagine all those men, coming through right through that very street that the house sits on, and then overrunning the house. And they basically took aim from up in the attic, and then the main floor of the house where the dining room is was used as a makeshift hospital. And the cellar was used mainly by the homeowner at the time of the battle, Harvey Sweeney. He and his fellow tenants who lived with him went down in there and kind of took refuge from the battle while the battle was going on. So the soldiers had full run of the house.
Yeah, so when I came to the Farnsworth House and with Richard Estep and his group, and Richard has written a book. It's an amazing book about the hauntings associated with the inn, but I didn't know the whole backstory. So as a clairvoyant, Richard likes to bring me into a location without knowing the history. So my first experience was in the dining area. Tell us a little bit about that area, like the tavern area.
Hmm. Yeah, that area, the dining area being used as a hospital, it becomes very active for a lot of people, and especially people who have any type of clairvoyant abilities or anything like that. They can sense that it was used for more than just dining. I mean, it's just obvious. And even myself, not being clairvoyant, when I go in, I just, have this feeling like there's something that had happened there, especially the attic. That's probably where I have the most experiences, is in the attic. But I've also had people go into the cellar and have experiences in there where, they'll send something and they'll say, was this ever used for this, or was this ever used for this? And I'm like, well, yeah, actually it was. And it surprised me when you were there, you did that. And I said, wow, that goes to show that, it's not just something, like there's definitely something there.
And so I was in the tavern area, and I was seeing like gurneys and like bodies and all that. And Richard was like, "Yes, Sam." And Richard's British. She's like, "Yep, that's like that. This was used as a hospital." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense."
Hmm.
Because I kept seeing
Yeah,
like gurneys and hospital beds and amputations
absolutely.
and all that stuff. And then that was the beginning of my journey. And so I ended up staying. I requested a non-haunted room, and so you're like, yeah, you're like, what? There's not,
Yeah,
that
I
doesn't
don't know if
exist.
there's any such thing in the house, but
So I'm like, well, put me in the Ginny Wade room. And so they're like, oh, that's probably our, like, well, they didn't say that, but I just said, put me in a non-haunted room. So I went into the Ginny Wade room, and I will tell you, I had a very a sleepless night. And there was a woman in that room specifically. I don't think it was Ginny Wade. I think it was another woman that was kind of like a nurse or some kind of like maternal figure. So tell me about that room specifically.
it was probably Mary. She is one of the ghosts that's in the house, and she is somewhat like of a matriarch of the house. She kind of watches over the people. If you're not feeling well, you might feel your hair brushed from your forehead. You might feel like the covers tucked in around you. Sometimes you'll feel a presence sit on the edge of your bed.
Yep.
Um, Things like that that those are things that accompany Mary. A lot of times, she'll have the smell of flowers will accompany her.
Mhm.
I've only had that happen to me once. I've smelled it one time in the house in all the years I've worked there, but it was so overwhelming that I went to the housekeeper at the time and said, "Do you guys have plugins or something? Like, oh my gosh, it's so bad." And she said, "No, where?" And I told her, and now working as the housekeeper, I know there aren't enough plugs in the house to have plugins. So I knew it was definitely something. But Mary does tend to go into all the rooms. It's not just uh, based on just the house. And that's
Right.
why I kind of laugh when you said a non haunted room, because I've had almost as many experiences in the outer garden rooms as I have in the house. So I don't know if it's just something, that residual energy that's around because of everything that went on the property and, with the house. But the Jenny Wade room, I've heard lots of people talk about a woman's presence in there, things moving on the walls. Um, I have stayed in there once myself, and it sounded like somebody was walking on well, it was the roof, but at the time I didn't know that there wasn't a room above me. So I accompanied it to the people staying above me. And the next day I kind of was like, well, the people were a little loud upstairs. It sounded like they were having a polka party up there. And the lady kind of laughed at me. She said, "Wait, what room were you in?" And I said, "The Jenny Wade room." And she said, "Honey, there's no room above that. It's just the roof." And I said, "Oh." So then I said, "Well, it was probably a 200-pound Pennsylvanian squirrel." So I don't know. But I mean, people have said they've had many things happen in the Jenny Wade room. So it does not surprise me whatsoever that you had that.
Yeah, so my experience was there I felt a female presence, and then I'm clairvoyant, so I actually see spirits, but I saw what looked like this white mist manifest on the corner of my bed, and she was just looking at me. And I mean, she was beautiful. She was very warm. There was a warm feeling to her, so I wasn't scared. But I
Right.
also, I'm like, ma'am, I'm not sure who you are, but you know, like, let me sleep tonight. And of course, she didn't let me sleep.
Right, of
But
course.
and I'm like, we'll talk later. Like, I kind of set my boundaries with the woman. I'm like,
Right. Right. I know. You have to though with those spirits in the house, because I know there are a couple up in the attic that I have had, like, I've been tapped on the shoulder up in the attic. I've had my hair pulled on up in the attic. And the one day the guy I just kept feeling my hair get pulled, and finally after the third pull I said, "Listen, whoever's pulling my hair, if you could stop, I don't appreciate that. I don't like it." And everybody in the room kind of looked at me, and this guy was sitting in front of me with one of the SLS cameras that showed the stick figures. And he just started freaking out. And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, if I show you, it'll disappear." So this lady went behind him with her cell phone and recorded it. And you could see me sitting in the chair, and right next to me, there was a stick figure messing with my hair.
wow.
So, yeah, so I know that there's things that go on, and you do have to set your boundaries with them. Just tell them, leave me be for a few minutes. I just need a break from you.
So the name Jenny Wade, of course, is really important in Gettysburg's history. For people listening who don't really know who she is, who is Jenny Wade?
Jenny Wade was the only civilian killed in the 3-day Battle of Gettysburg. They believe that she was shot from a bullet that may have come from the Farnsworth House garret, but they're not 100% sure. But different trajectories have been done, and it points to that house and a couple others. But that is who Jenny Wade is. She was 20 years old at the time that she was shot and killed.
Now, do you think that her spirit haunts the area?
I'm not 100% sure. I would say if it was going to haunt any area, it would be the Jenny Wade house.
Right.
Now, I am not one to say that spirits can't travel, because I truly believe that they have the ability to go wherever they want to go. So, does she ever, or could she ever stop down to our house? Possibly. I'm not going to say yes or no, but I mean, if there were anywhere that she was going to haunt, I would say it would be the Jenny Wade House Museum, or the house that she grew up in, which is just up the street on Baltimore Street.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about the idea that spirits do travel, there's actually a mirror that is in the cellar, and so I walk into the cellar area with Richard and his group, and automatically I'm drawn to this mirror. And so tell people about the mirror that's, I guess, not supposed to be there. It was supposed to be taken away
Yeah,
from
it
the
was it
previous
was
show.
taken out. They did take it out. They had it cleansed and blessed and brought it back.
Okay.
But what had happened, when it was brought in, we started to have some issues with women in the house. They would feel like a choking feeling, or
Mhm.
a hand over their mouth, and just negative sort of things would happen. Pinching, poking, tripping, just not very nice things. So we finally had a few people come in, and they investigated the mirror. And what they had found was that we got it from an estate sale, the Collins family, which they lived near, on the outskirts of Gettysburg. They had a son named Clarence who was not a very good kid. He did some illegal things when he was younger, and then he and his buddy decided that they were going to rob a tour guide out on the battlefield. They were going to hire him out and rob him because he carried large sums of money with him. His name was George Bowserman. So they get him out on the remote back road, and Clarence shoots him. And they hide everything, but it's all traced back to them, and they're tried and found guilty, and they're sentenced to death. But while on death row, Clarence did beautiful artwork in his cell in the jail. And there was actually a piece of his art still shown and hanging in the jail that was done with brick dust and burnt matches. And I mean, it was phenomenal. It was beautiful. And what they believe is that a piece of his art used to be housed in the frame. But when he committed this crime, his family was so ashamed of him that they pulled it out and put the mirror in. So they think that he was the one causing all of these bad things to happen to the women that were coming in the house. Now, they did take it out, and when they brought it back, I was kind of like, what is that thing doing back here? But they brought it back and they said that it was cleansed and blessed. And since they brought it back, I have not had anything negative happen on any of my tours, knock on wood, but I have not had anything bad happen. So I'm hoping it stays that way.
So I'm a psychometrist, so I can actually pick up on the energy from the mirror. So I was picking up Lorraine Warren. Why would I pick up Lorraine Warren?
Lorraine told them years ago when the mirror was in there to either cover it for 3 years, at
Okay.
least cover it for 3 years, or just get rid of it altogether.
Okay.
And nothing was done with it for a while. It actually belongs to the owner's daughter. So when it was taken out and brought back in, that's when we started having the weird things happen with women, all the bad things. But Lorraine told them all those years ago to either cover it, you know, or get rid of it, you know. And honestly, it's a morning theater. Well, it was a morning theater. Now they have it set up as just a haunted cellar. So it really doesn't matter now. But when it was a morning theater, really all of the mirrors should have been either covered or turned around backwards, because back in those time periods when they had a body in the house, they either covered the mirror or turned them around because of the spirit becoming trapped in the mirror. So, you know, it was the thing. They thought it was, kind of creepy to have the mirrors out, which it is. I've had people come up to me after my tours and ask me if there are old lady spirits in the house. And I said, well, yes, why? And it was not even a tour that was about any of the ghosts. And I said, why? Can I ask you, why are you asking me this? And the man looked and said, well, my son saw an old lady in that mirror over there and pointed to it in the back of the room. So, things like that happen. And I think, you know, that let me believe that it was good that they did have it cleansed and blessed. But then part of me still thinks maybe it should be covered still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I'm getting from it too. So Lorraine was communicating with me, and she was like, "Have them cover the mirror." And she was pointing, like she was like pointing at the mirror, and she was also saying that the spirits were coming in and out of the mirror too. It almost served as a portal. Uh, and so that's something when we were talking about, like Jenny Wade possibly like stopping by, that could have happened. She could have
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm going to hang out at the Farnsworth House Inn, uh,
Right.
and hang out with my ghost friends. But I did get that there was traveling back and forth. But I do think that may have stopped recently. But that, like for a while, like that's what was going on.
Oh, I believe it. Absolutely. I absolutely believe that.
And so when I was also right in the area, behind me, I was getting my shirt tugged by what seemed to be a little child. And this is the part that I'm gonna start crying because like this little kid was the sweetest little kid. It was like tugging, like, "Hey, Mister." So tell me about the little boy.
There's a little boy that we call Jeremy in the house. He lived up the street. It was post Civil War, so probably like 1890s. He was out in front of the house with his friends playing a game called horse tag. They used to run up and tag the horse and run back. Well, as it picked up speed coming off of Baltimore Hill, it trampled him.
Oh,
And his dad carried him back into the house, into what is now the Sarah Black bathroom. It was a nursery back then. Laid him out and called in the doctors, but there was really nothing they could do. And he laid there for 3 days before he finally passed away.
mm,
So Jeremy is a little guy that he does love playing with electronics. So if you have any devices in the house, he loves playing with them. Sometimes people staying in the house will have their cell phones unplugged in the middle of the night. Coins, he loves coins. So you'll have change and it will disappear from the dressers, or you might have change on your person and it just comes up missing. He's a little pickpocket, but he loves taking change, and I find it all over the house. I mean, I will find change in the weirdest spots, and I just pick it up. We put it in a cup, and then when I get a good bit of it, I take it down and put it in a jug that we have down in the cellar. And at the end of the year, we donate it to St. Jude's. So
oh,
I said, well, if a kid's stealing it, we might as well give it to other kids that can use it. So, but he takes coins all the time from people, and he loves uh, just interacting with people. So if there are moms, and he likes blondes for some reason,
yeah.
blonde-haired women, and young children. He'll go and untie shoes. He'll tie shoes together. He's a little kid. I mean, he's just a pure out little kid. He acts like a little kid, and it's just comical how you think of a ghost and you don't think, oh, he's a little kid. He's still acting like a little kid, and he does, and it's interesting. It really is.
Well, so also too for me, like I like people ask me like why don't you cross certain spirits? And for me, I mean, with Jeremy, he was happy there. He loved the
Mhm,
people. He
mhm.
was very interactive. He's okay in that house. If he was in danger, I would say absolutely. But have you considered doing that? Like maybe like crossing over Jeremy.
I know years ago, they did have someone coming, and they came into the house and did a light cleansing and offered that. And I don't know how many took them up on it.
Right.
They say that they know of at least three that they know of. Just they must have taken them up on the offer, but
Right.
I don't know if they've done it since. But this has been years ago that it was done, and Jeremy never took them up on it. So
I mean, he's happy. He loves all the
yeah.
people coming into the
He
location. He
does,
loves
he
putting
likes
on
to
shirts and stealing
he
money.
does, he does, he likes to visit with people, he's funny, and, plays with stuff, and I remember there was a guy staying with us not too long ago, and he said that he had, his shaving cream on his face, and he was in, like, his trousers, and his wife asked for a towel, so he went out to get her a towel, and he heard chuckling, and he said, "I just thought this poor little kid sees me looking like this." He had to laugh at me. And it was just funny because I said, "Well, yeah, that's probably exactly what he was doing, is laughing at you."
And also down in the cellar, I was picking up other activities as well, like poker games and like gambling and all that. So what else happened down in that basement or that cellar?
Well, it did, at one point in time, used to be used as a tavern.
Oh, okay.
Now I don't know much about, when. I'm thinking it was, maybe when Mr. Schultz and them first bought it in the early '70s, but I know it was a tavern at one point in time. Not very long, but for a short-lived time, it was a tavern, so that would make lots of sense, you know.
And then also you mentioned the main inn, and so pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to possibly have a paranormal experience at the Farnsworth
Absolutely.
House Inn. It's just so much
Absolutely.
energy there.
Absolutely.
What are some of the other locations? You mentioned the attic. What's like rooms that are maybe more active than other
Um,
rooms?
I have had, a lot of people make claims to the Sarah Black room. Now, granted, that is the room that Jeremy passed away in the bathroom of that room. And I would say it is definitely an active room. They say it's one of the most active in the house, but I'd have to say that a close second would be the McFarlane room.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who see a gentleman sitting in a chair in the McFarlane room. People will get orbs on videos. People will get. I actually have a video of a man standing there. He's videoing the room. He's just taping the room, just trying to, get it on film. And something or someone walks right by his camera. Now, where he's standing is literally a foot from the bed. I've tried to recreate this video umpteen thousand times and I can't. The figure passes quickly in front of him, and then as he's panning the photo back, like the video back, it passes back in front of him yet again. And the
Wow.
second time that it passes back, you can tell almost that it's a woman. You can almost see the hair coming down from like by her shoulders. So I mean, the McFarlane room's very active. So I'd say in the house, those two rooms are probably the most active. The Jeremy's probably a close third because there's a lot of toys set up in that room. It's set up like a child's room. So tons of toys. People will, position toys certain ways, leave, go do what they're going to do, and come back, and the toys will be moved. There's also a music box in that room that will play on its own. I've had it happen to me. I've been in there doing an investigation, nothing's happening. I shut the door, lock it, and I hear music.
Wow.
I'm like, what is that? So I open the door back up. There's the music box going. I was like, you couldn't do that when we were all in here, could you? So that happens all the time in that room with toys and the music box. but pretty much that's pretty much the I'd say the biggest hauntings as far as the rooms go. You do have some activity in the other ones. The Sweeney room, I've had the water come on numerous times and actually shut off right in front of me. So that was kind of unnerving. You know, when you're looking at a shower and then you see the handle turn, it's kind of you get kind of taken back by that a little bit. You know, and then in the Sarah Black room, there's also a wedding dress that's in there that belonged to the Schultz family, one of the Schultz family members. And I've actually seen the arm become animated. The arm has actually
Wow.
lifted up to about midway and dropped. And I wasn't really paying attention to it. I turned, I don't know what made me turn, but I turned and looked at the dress and the arm was up in the air and then it just dropped. And I
That
thought,
makes that's like, oh, that would terrify me.
I know, I thought, oh my gosh, I want to get out of here like now. So that's happened in that room to me. And as far as the garden rooms, I've had things happen in all of them except for Custer. I've never really spent much time in Custer, but in the garden rooms, I've had the walking above me on the Jenny Wade room. I've heard a voice in the Lincoln room before asked me if I was okay. I slipped, and usually I would leave the door open. And sometimes hostesses or waitresses will walk by and say, "Hey, how you doing?" or something. You know, well, I slipped, and I thought one of them said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I turned to tell them I was okay, and the door was shut. So that scared
Oh,
me a little bit.
yeah.
I hurried up and got out of that room real quick. I don't know. It just didn't, you know, I mean, they were being very concerned and very nice, thank goodness, but I did not feel comfortable after that. And then in the bellboy room, I've had some of the, well, in the bathroom, there is a little dolphin. It's like a little figurine. I was in the other room looking through the TV channels and I heard something crash in the bathroom and I walked in and the little figurine was thrown on the floor. So
Wow.
there's no way that it could have just fallen. I mean, there's no way. So things like that, you know, the whole house is active. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's just the wrong place or the right place at the right time, but that's pretty much, you know, you never know what you're gonna have happen in the house. You really don't.
And so I was going to ask you, like, you have so many experiences, Kayla, but like, is there one that you would say is the like sort of like the quintessential experience
Yeah.
that terrified you?
Yes, probably. And it really didn't terrify me, but it woke me up and made me realize that this isn't just, you know, baloney. I mean, there's something to it. And this happened again about 17 years ago when I first started in the house. I was hostessing, and one of my jobs at the end of the night was to set the tables for the next day because it is a bed and breakfast. So I'm in there and I'm setting the table and I turn to grab a plate off the table behind me. And when I turn to put the plate on the table right in front of the fireplace, a little boy ran through the dining room.
Ooh.
And I saw him and I thought, oh, shoot, somebody's kid's loose from the bed and breakfast. You know, so I go running back to the waitresses and I said, hey, do you see the little boy run through here? And they just looked at me like I was from another planet. And I said, guys, there was a little boy that just ran through here. And I told them, you know, he was, you know, about this tall. He had blondish hair, a cream colored shirt. Like he ran right through the dining room. He got to be one of the guests' kids. And they're like, Kayla, there's no little boy in here. I said, yes, there is. I just saw him. What do you mean? They're like, oh, you probably just saw Jeremy. And my first thought was, oh, is that Mr. Schultz's grandson? And they laughed at me. And I said, what's so funny? And they said, Jeremy's a little boy that haunts the inn. And I said, get out of here. They're like, it's a little boy that haunts the inn. Like, you didn't know this place was haunted? I said, what do you mean it's haunted? And they're like, Kayla, it's like the second most haunted inn in Pennsylvania. How do you not know this? And I honestly had no clue whatsoever. So it kind of scared me a little bit because first of all, I thought, you know, I always had this predetermined notion of that ghosts would look like lit up or like a pale light or misty or something. You know, you just had this feeling like this is what a ghost would look like. Well, he did not look like that. He looked like a little boy, like
Right.
literally nothing, no light to him, no transparency, just a straightforward little boy ran through the dining room. And I know I'm not crazy, so I know what I saw. And I think that's when I was like, okay, there's something to this. There's definitely something to this. And I think that's kind of the most, I'd say, the most eye-opening experience that I've had in the house. That, and besides being tapped on the shoulder and hair pulled up in the attic. Now that kind of scared me a little bit too. But
So Kayla, are there any shadow figures in the house?
in the kitchen, I've heard a few people say that there is a shadow figure in the kitchen. I have never seen it yet. Now, I go in the kitchen at night when I have my paranormal tours. In fact, the way that I get out of the kitchen, I have to shut all the lights off in the dining room, lock everything up, and go out the fail-safe door, which is through the kitchen in the dark. So I'm surprised I haven't seen it, but people say that there's a shadow figure there in the kitchen area. And I've even had cooks say that pans have gone flying off the shelves and different things like that too. I have not been there to experience that, you know, but I'm not going to say it didn't happen either.
I will say my experience at the Farnsworth House Inn was very positive. The ghosts are good ghosts, and that's like we always go to like haunted hotels and other locations expecting the spirits to be like terrifying. I will say like they were very welcoming. Jeremy was a sweet little kid,
Mhm.
and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. So if you like say you want to go to a haunted location, I would highly recommend going to the Farnsworth House Inn in Gettysburg, PA, because it's almost like Casper the Friendly Ghost, you know, it's
Yeah,
like
right.
positive energy.
It's nothing to be petrified of. You know, it's not like, you know, when we were having the issues with the women being pinched and stuff, I was very upset about that because I didn't want to take people in there and have them have a bad experience.
Right.
You know, and I thought, how am I going to explain this? You know, if someone feels a choking feeling, I mean, what do you say to them? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know. So when we had them come in and take care of that, I was kind of, you know, really excited that they were able to fix it and get it, you know, dealt with. To now, when people come in, I'm like, there's really nothing to be afraid of. You know, I've never had anything bad happen to me personally that I would say I'm scared to death. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this house. Everything there is just like, hey, I'm here. Just know I'm here. They just want you to know that they're there with you. I think that's, you know, what's nice about the Farnsworth house is it's not a terrifying, you know, scary place. You know, it's somewhere that you can go and you can have an experience and not be scared to death of it.
Right. Well, the other places in Gettysburg, however, that to me were terrifying. We were doing research for Richard's book called The Great American Ghost Trip,
Hmm.
and so apparently I was the comic relief in the book, because but in a good way, like in a
Yeah.
fun way, because I love Richard. But also too, we went to the orphanage, and I actually had a pretty profound experience in the dungeon area in
Hmm.
the orphanage. Have you been there?
I have. I have. And I will tell you, I was there about maybe 10 years ago when my son was 9 or 10 years old. And I have not been back since because I took a ghost box and like a spirit box and some different equipment and we went into the pit that they called it.
Yeah.
And I had things come across that were very unnerving, like a sorry, and help me came across on the. I said, you know, I felt very uncomfortable in that place, very uncomfortable. It was just it was a very unnerving experience.
So for people who, so the orphanage there was a woman who apparently was not good to the children, and there was a man that was not good to the children as
Right.
well. There was an area that they say where the kids were punished and chained up to the wall,
Correct.
and I'm like that's crazy. So I
It is.
walk into the pit, and I'm in there with Richard Estep. And I walk out of it and I start whimpering like a child. Like I'm like, and like Richard's like, "What's wrong, Sam?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And
Yeah.
then listen to this. So the spirit apparently jumped inside me. So it was like a walk-in,
Hmm.
and then my face contorted, like it like took the shape of the
Ooh.
child.
Oh, wow.
It was so creepy.
I bet
And
it was.
and so this apparently the child spirit kind of like walked through me.
Right.
And I, as someone who does this often, like I'm rarely freaked out. That situation freaked me out.
I guarantee. I
So
would have
like
been freaked out by it.
like you, I'm not going back to the orphanage.
I haven't I can honestly say I've not been there since my son was like 9 or 10, and I have no want to go back there. I was very uncomfortable. And I'm not clairvoyant or anything, but just walking into that place, I just got this eerie, just sick feeling like there's something not right in this place. Something bad happened here. I don't know if it's like an empath type thing, but when I go into different places, I there's certain times that I go and I'm like, "Ooh, this doesn't feel right." I mean, there's times I go in the attic and I'm like, "Ooh, I shouldn't be in here. They're doing something." But, again, it's just I don't know if it's me or if it's just something that happens, but yeah, the orphanage is very, very creepy. It's
Well,
very creepy.
what I'm getting from you, Kayla, so you are an empath, and because you're at the Farnsworth House Inn like every day, it almost it builds up your muscle. So your muscle,
Yeah,
you have a very strong muscle. So you have abilities because you kind of work for it,
right.
and so that empathic ability is 17 years later, you're actually a full blown empath
Oh, okay.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I've noticed that since I've started there and been there and been there and been there like every day, every day, every day, I do feel a lot more things that are going on. Like I know there was a lady that took a picture of me when I was doing a tour one night, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind that there was something over to the right of me going on. Like I knew there was something over there.
Right.
And I kept looking at everyone. I'm like, listen, there's something over there. I'm going to try to cut the tour. We're going to go out because I just felt like there was something there staring me down. And she took a picture and she sent it to me. And in the picture, you can see me kind of looking over at the door that's to the catacombs, toward the back portion of the cellar. And right above it, there's a white mist that's formed in
Wow.
her photo. And I thought, that's pretty cool that she actually caught me saying there's something over there. And there was. So I thought that was pretty interesting because it doesn't happen very often, but you know, that really struck home. I was like, wow, yeah, I guess maybe I'm not crazy. I do feel things, you know. So,
So, so Kayla, if people are visiting the Farnsworth House Inn and they want to have a haunted experience, do you recommend other locations in Gettysburg as well?
I always tell people if they want to have some type of energy, like some type of activity, be it with any of their senses, because experiencing ghosts, you're not always going to see something.
Right.
I tell them to go over to it's a portion of the Grove. It's near the base of Cemetery Hill. It's over by the school property. There's a lot of energy over there because that's where a lot of the soldiers were encamped before they started to ascend the hill to take the hill. And I'm telling you what, that place is very active. I've been out there, I've gone out there at night and even in the daytime, and weird things have happened. Weird things have come across the ghost box. Um, EMFs, people have caught EMFs out there, like with the EMFs and the EVPs and different things like that. Things will go, it's just crazy out there.
And what about? So I had a friend recently because when I went to dinner, I went to was it Dobbins
Hmm.
Tavern,
Hmm.
and I had an experience there myself. And there was a picture that they shot. I would look like a shadow hanging at Dobbins Tavern. So that could be another location for people to
Yeah,
visit. The food's
Dobbin
good
House is
too.
really interesting. I know it was used, a portion of it was used as for the Underground Railroad. So it has that history tied behind it as well. And they have a really neat, like, it's kind of like set up like a museum type thing where you can go and look to see where they used to hide the people as they were traveling on the Underground Railroad. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting house. I've never been in to have an actual experience in the house. I've been in there, but I've never had any experiences in there. But I know there are lots of people who have. So that's another cool, really cool place.
And so, if there was an overrated place in Gettysburg, would it be like? What would you say would be like the overrated location in Gettysburg?
Let me see, because I don't want to get anybody mad at me.
I know, right? You know all these people. Well, I will say this: like every time I go because I go to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, and I highly recommend going to that.
Hmm.
So that's Richard and I usually have a table next to each other, but
Hmm.
we go to the Sachs Covered Bridge, and
Yeah,
everybody goes there.
yeah.
And if I
I have not had experiences out there. I
okay,
have not. Now I've gone to Suicide Bridge, which is the Eisenhower Bridge.
right,
That bridge is a little more creepy than the Sachs Covered Bridge. I'm just saying. I
okay,
mean, just the feeling that you get at the two places, I feel a lot more inclined to be creeped out by the Eisenhower Bridge. It's newer, but they say that people have committed suicide from the bridge and everything. I don't. It's unnerving out there. But Sachs, I mean, some people have had experiences. My friend went out there and had an experience where she had a cigarette lit, and I don't smoke, so I'm not sure how it works. But I guess when you drag in on a cigarette, it turns bright red on the end. She said that they had it sitting there, and they told we call him Smoking Joe, told him to go ahead and take a puff of the cigarette, and she literally saw it get bright orange, and then like smoke went up near them. It happened 2 or 3 times, and then the cigarette like flipped off of the bridge, like off of the post by the bridge.
wow.
So I've never, I mean, I saw it on video. She had it on video. It was pretty cool, but I haven't, I mean, I've heard a lot of people get activity out there. I have not. So I mean, I think it's a little more overrated than a lot of the other places. Um, there are definitely much. I want to say many more places in Gettysburg that are haunted than the Sachs Bridge. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just like every time I go, like we kind of go every year, and I'm like, they're like, hey, let's go to the Sachs Covered Bridge. I'm like, okay, and we're
Yeah,
out there. There's like just like I would say
there's like
hundreds
eight
of
thousand
people.
people. I know. I know. I noticed that, and it's like you get just as much activity walking up Devil's Den in the middle of the day than you would out Sachs Bridge. I
Right.
mean, because that place, Devil's Den alone, is just creepy, just because of the way. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's creepy.
So, so with haunted hotels with San Baltrusis, I always ask my guests if you could stay at any room with a boo in the world, where would you want to stay?
I would probably, well, it's probably a toss up. I'd like to go to the Winchester Mansion,
Ooh.
but I would really like to stay at the Stanley Hotel.
Oh yes,
I
that
think that would be really cool.
yeah, I've stayed there, and so like that. People, when I ask this question, that is
Uh,
probably the most requested
yeah.
room with a boo and from everybody.
Yeah, I want to say the Stanley Hotel probably. I would say, but I mean, too bad the Winchester isn't set up like a hotel, because I would go there in a heartbeat.
And so, Kayla, something like also too, like when I came in, it was around the summer. So this is a little bit after COVID. Did you notice like that the spirits at the Farnsworth House Inn were kind of like how were they during the COVID lockdown?
It seemed like I don't know if it's when people are not there, it's like they're not having that energy to feed off of,
Right.
so they're not quite as active as they normally are. Um, but we still had activity. We still, every now and then you'd still get a glimpse of something that would go on, but it wasn't quite as active as when there are people coming in and trying to make contact with these guys. I did notice that, and I mean, over the years, I've noticed different time periods, different times of the year, it's more active than others. And they're like, well, for obvious reasons, obviously July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, when the anniversary of the battle, it's much, much, much more active than it is, in August. But then again, you have October hits and it spikes up in October too. But I don't think that it has anything to do with the whole Halloween and, the spirits and the moon cycles and all that. I think it has to do with them taking the bodies off the field in October. That's when they started removing the bodies from the field. So
Oh.
I think October 16th is when they started to take a lot of the bodies off the fields. And
Hmm.
I think that that's probably another reason it starts to get a little more active in October.
And also something that I saw the gurneys, but I also saw bodies. Now, was the house used as a makeshift morgue at all?
They did, by what I've been told, they did have bodies put down in the back portion of the cellar.
Okay,
That they did take bodies down there and put them back there. Now, I don't think they were left down there long. They did have them removed, but they were left down there. And there was
right.
actually a soldier found down in the back portion of the cellar. He was comforting one of his fallen comrades who'd nearly been decapitated. His name was Lieutenant Jackson.
Hmm.
And he was seen like holding him and kind of comforting him, humming to him. I've actually heard humming come from that room 3 times in all the years I've worked there.
Yeah, but you're telling
So,
me that story, like that energy's still there. Like I
oh,
like
I
it,
know,
yeah.
definitely, definitely. I mean, you can feel it sometimes. I've only been back in that area twice. Once with the owner's son because I told him I wanted to see what it looked like, so I didn't sound stupid when people asked me, and I said I don't know. And the other was to let the electrician go back there. I opened the door and let him in, and I left. I was not staying with him because I just felt really just overwhelmed by whatever was going on in there. I did not feel comfortable, so I was like, "Okay, here you go. I'm out."
So, Kayla, what's new for you? Like, what's next for you? I know you have a history degree. You have
Yeah,
17 years at the Farnsworth House Inn.
yeah.
I see a book in your
I don't
future.
know. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it. I just it's one of those things. I teach right now online. I'm teaching. I'm working at the house. I'm doing tours. So just finding time to write is what I would like to do. Maybe once winter hits and it kind of slows down a little bit, I'll be able to do that. But possibly, I mean, that's definitely something I've looked into and I've talked to a few people about. So it's possible.
And also too, like I'm actually working on a book on haunted trains, train stations, any like haunted train station experience. I think there's a haunted train station in Gettysburg, right?
I believe there is. I have not been to the train station to really, you know,
Talk
see
about
and
it.
experience
Yeah.
anything with it, but I've heard that there are people that have had things happen to them. It's at the old train station, right? I think it's at 15, like where they have the, or on Chambersburg Street, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but they do say that there is one in Gettysburg. Now, I haven't, like I said, I don't have enough knowledge to really go into it, but I have heard that.
And so if there's one person from that era that you could like talk to today, and as someone that's a history major, who would you want to talk to and why?
Chamberlain, Joshua Chamberlain. Yes, he was a teacher. He was in charge of the 20th Main up at Little Round Top, and he was very successful up there. But I think that he kind of had maybe some type of psychic ability. I don't know, but he kind of knew where things were going with the battlefields. And he wrote about it when he came back to visit Gettysburg. He said that he could still feel his men were still there with him, and he wrote about it. And I think him being a teacher and not actually being a career soldier and just kind of being thrust into that position and being successful at it, I would just like to just pick his brain for just a little bit just to find out, what made him tick, what made him think that things were going to be the way they are. He was very he was very knowledgeable. He was a very knowledgeable man, and I think I'd really like to have got to know him. I really do.
So, Caleb, if people want to stay at the Farnsworth House Inn or take a tour, where do they go?
They go to you can go to the Farnsworth House actually in Gettysburg, or you can go on farnsworthhouseinn.com, and there are tons of different tabs with the tours and things like that, and get all the info. And they can also call the house and set up a room, a stay, and set up a tour and join us. It's a lot of fun. It is. It's a lot of fun.
And what I also love too, like when you walk in to check into the inn, there's a nice little gift shop right when you
Mhm.
walk in. I love the stuff in the gift shop too.
Mhm. Yeah, it's cute. They have everything, tons of books. It used to be one of the I want to say, most prestigious bookshops on the eastern border when it came to Civil War. And Mr. Schultz is trying to build it back up again, I think, because they have definitely upped their book population as compared to what they used to have. So he's getting back there.
Well, I'm so excited, and I would love to visit again, and then also and hang out with you too, and talk about your stories,
Absolutely.
because it was a wonderful experience meeting you there, and looking forward to going back and hopefully staying in a different room and not the
Yeah.
Jimmy Wade room next time.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have to try to stay in one of the haunted rooms.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for checking
Thank
in with
you.
Haunted Hotels with Sam
Thank
Baltrusis.
you.
I'll talk
Thank
to you.
you.
I'll see everybody next week on Haunted Hotels.
My Paranormal Medicine.